Ludwig Stumpfegger, Part 1. The Doctor of the Dying Reich. Berlin, November 1944. The cold wind swept through the cracked windows of the Reich Chancellery, carrying with it the distant rumble of artillery. Soviet shells were beginning to fall on the outskirts of the city, but here, inside the marble corridors stained with smoke and fear, the war felt different, stagnant, suffocating, inevitable. Dr. Ludwig Stumpfegger walked briskly down the hallway, his posture straight, his white coat immaculate. His face was narrow and pale, his eyes sharp behind rimmed glasses. He looked like a man who had trained for quiet hospital wards, not the collapsing empire he now served. But Stumpfegger was no ordinary surgeon. He was Himmler's personal physician, educated, precise, and fiercely ambitious. His rise had been fast, too fast for some. Rumors followed him like shadows. Experiments, secret surgeries, privileges earned through proximity to power. He ignored the whispers. He had worked hard for this position. He believed in efficiency, in order, in the purity of science. Politics were secondary. At least, that's what he told himself. 1. Summoned by the wolf. 2 SS guards stood at the entrance to the office. They opened the door silently as Stumpfegger approached. Inside, the air was thick with cigarette smoke. Heinrich Himmler stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back, his silhouette framed by the gray Berlin sky. "Stumpfegger," Himmler said without turning. "You've read the reports from Posen?" "Yes, Reichsfuhrer," Ludwig replied. "Morale is low. The wounded," Himmler interrupted sharply, "are a burden we can no longer sustain." Stumpfegger stiffened. This wasn't a medical conversation. This was politics, dark, poisonous politics. Himmler turned, his eyes cold. "The Führer needs stability, calm. Those around him must trust their physicians." He paused. "I am assigning you to Berlin, full-time. You will assist Dr. Morell with Adolf Hitler himself. Do you understand?" Stumpfegger swallowed. "Yes, I do." But inside he felt a ripple of unease. Working under Hitler's personal physician meant entering the epicenter of the collapsing Reich. Himmler stepped closer. "You are loyal, Ludwig," he said quietly, "and we will need loyalty in the coming months." Outside, anti-aircraft guns barked. The room trembled. Stumpfegger nodded, but a chill settled into his bones. 2. The bunker awaits. By January 1945, Stumpfegger had descended into the Führerbunker beneath the Reich Chancellery. The world above was being consumed by Soviet fire. Rubble lined the streets. Smoke choked the sky. People whispered about surrender in dark corners, just before the Gestapo dragged them away. Inside the bunker, it was always night. Dim lights flickered in narrow corridors, concrete walls pressed close, the air heavy with cigar smoke and fear. The smell of mold and burning diesel clung to everything. Dr. Morell waddled past him, sweating, coughing, smelling of chemicals. "Ludwig," Morell muttered, "prepare 2 injections. The Führer is trembling again. Hands, uncontrollable. He won't sleep." Stumpfegger frowned. "What are you giving him this time, doctor?" Morell scowled. "What I must, what he demands. Do as I say." As Morell disappeared into Hitler's room, Stumpfegger felt nausea twist inside him. The Führer's health was worse than the public ever knew. Tremors, paranoia, migraines, digestive collapse, sedatives, stimulants, more sedatives. It was a miracle he could still speak. Stumpfegger retreated to the infirmary. He stared at his trembling hands, suddenly unsure whether it was the cold or the dread. 3. Magda Goebbels and the children. A soft knock came at the infirmary door. "Doctor?" A woman's voice, gentle, refined, tired. Stumpfegger opened it to see Magda Goebbels, elegant even in despair. Her blonde hair pinned perfectly, her blue eyes hollow. Behind her stood 6 children, ranging from toddlers to teenagers. Quiet. Too quiet. "My children aren't sleeping," Magda whispered. "The bombs, the noise. Can you give them something?" Stumpfegger hesitated. "These are dangerous times. Sedatives for children." "They must sleep," she insisted, voice trembling. "They must not be afraid. Not now." He looked into her eyes and saw something terrible growing there. Not fear, acceptance. Something inside him froze. "I will prepare something mild," he said softly. As he worked, Magda stood behind him, staring into the void. Stumpfegger wanted to ask her why she had brought the children here, why she didn't flee, why she kept writing letters late at night. But he didn't ask, because he already suspected the answers, and he was afraid of hearing them. 4. The collapse begins. March turned to April. The Soviets reached the outskirts of Berlin. The bunker trembled day and night. Hitler screamed at ghosts, armies that didn't exist, divisions that had never formed. Eva Braun danced in candlelight, pretending everything was normal. SS officers drank themselves into madness. Women cried softly in hallways, and Ludwig Stumpfegger moved silently among them, injecting, treating, calming, observing. His medical records became meaningless. His skills became instruments in a tragedy spiraling far beyond medicine. On April 29th, Hitler married Eva Braun. On April 30th, Stumpfegger heard the shot. It echoed through the concrete like a hammer striking a coffin. SS guards locked the corridors. The bunker fell silent. Ludwig knew the world above had changed forever, but the nightmare below wasn't over. Not yet. Ludwig Stumpfegger. Part 2. The Children of the Bunker. Berlin, April 30th. May 1st, 1945. The thunder of Soviet artillery never stopped. Concrete dust drifted from the ceiling of the Führerbunker like gray snow. Every corridor smelled of cold metal, sweat, and fear. Dr. Ludwig Stumpfegger had just heard the shot. Hitler was dead. Guards sealed the doors, shouting orders. Eva's last scream still echoed faintly in the hallway. Somebody began crying behind a half-open door. Someone else laughed hysterically. Madness floated in the stale air like poison gas. Stumpfegger leaned against the wall, pulse pounding. The end had come. But for him, there was still one more horror waiting. 1. Magda's decision. Hours after Hitler's death, Magda Goebbels appeared in the infirmary doorway again. She looked almost peaceful. "Doctor," she said quietly, "I need your help." Behind her stood the 6 Goebbels children in clean clothes, hair combed, hands folded. They looked like they were going to church, not to their fate. Stumpfegger felt his throat tighten. "Frau Goebbels, what are you asking me to do?" Magda's eyes glistened, not with tears but with strange, serene conviction. "I cannot allow them to grow up in a world without National Socialism," she whispered. "My children must go with us." She took a step closer. "You are a physician. You know how to do this. Gently." His stomach twisted. "Frau Goebbels," he said, voice trembling, "they are innocent." "Yes," she said softly, "that is why they must be spared what comes after." He stared at her, at the children, at the impossible cruelty wrapped in a mother's voice. Magda placed a trembling hand on his sleeve. Please, Dr. Stumpfegger, for them." His breath shook. He wanted to refuse, wanted to shout, to fight, to run. But the walls of the bunker pressed closer. The SS guards stood everywhere. Goebbels himself waited in the hallway, his expression dead, as if his soul had already left his body. Stumpfegger understood. This was not a request. It was an order, and refusal meant death. 2. The children sleep. In a small, dimly lit room furnished with bunk beds, Magda sat with each child, stroking their hair. They were calm, trusting, unaware of what was coming. "Doctor," she said softly, "give them the medicine." Stumpfegger's hands shook as he prepared the morphine injections. The vials clinked on the tray. The needle gleamed under the flickering light. He approached Helga, the eldest. She was 12. "Is this to help us sleep?" she asked. Her voice was so soft, it broke something inside him. Stumpfegger nodded. "Yes, to sleep." She smiled. "You're very kind, doctor." The words stabbed him deeper than any knife. One by one, he administered the morphine. Small arms relaxed. Breathing slowed. Magda kissed each child on the forehead. "You will dream," she whispered. "Dream forever." When all 6 were unconscious, she looked at Stumpfegger. "Now the poison." His mouth went His mouth went dry. She handed him the cyanide ampules. His voice cracked. Frau Goebbels, She touched his cheek gently. "Ludwig, there is no mercy left in this world but the one we give them now." He looked down at the sleeping faces, the innocence, the trust. His hands moved mechanically, as if detached from his soul. 1 vial, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Whispers of breath turned into stillness. The room became a tomb. Magda fell to her knees beside the beds, shoulders shaking silently. She didn't cry. She simply held their hands until they grew cold. Stumpfegger stumbled out, almost collapsing in the hallway. He would remember the smell of that room for the rest of his short life. 3. The last hours of the bunker. After the children were gone, the bunker unraveled completely. Josef Goebbels shot himself and Magda soon after. SS officers drank poison. Others shot themselves in offices and broom closets. A few tried to bargain with the Soviets and were gunned down at the exits. The concrete walls seemed to drip with death. Stumpfegger walked like a ghost, barely feeling his legs. His hands were still trembling from what he had done. He passed the room where Hitler's body had been burned. Only ash remained. He passed women crying into their hands, past officers arguing about who was to blame, past guards loading pistols with shaking fingers. He knew he had to leave. He could not die here. 4. Escape attempt. May 1st, midnight. SS Brigadeführer Wilhelm Mohnke assembled a group for a final breakout. The Soviets surrounded the entire government district, but small groups still had a chance to slip through the rubble. Stumpfegger joined a column with Martin Bormann, Hitler's secretary, several SS men, a few staff officers. The streets above were unrecognizable. Berlin was a skeleton city. Ruins, fire, shells falling like hammer blows. They ran through alleyways, stepping over corpses half buried in debris. Artillery lit the night sky with flashes of red and white. Bormann shouted over the explosions, "To the Weidendammer Bridge! Move!" A tank shell hit nearby. The shockwave threw Stumpfegger to the ground. He tasted blood. They reached the bridge, but it was under heavy Soviet fire. Flashes of machine gun tracer rounds sliced across it. A panicked German lieutenant yelled, "Run! Run now!" The group sprinted across the bridge, bullets snapping past their legs. Screams echoed. Men fell. Halfway across, something exploded. A Soviet anti-tank shell slammed into the railing. The world turned white. Stumpfegger's ears rang. The ground shook. He fell to his knees, dazed. Bormann clutched his chest, blood pouring between his fingers. Stumpfegger staggered to his feet, stumbling into a ruined garden. Another blast, then darkness. 5. The end of Ludwig Stumpfegger. At dawn, Soviet soldiers combed the area. 2 bodies lay side by side near the railway embankment. Martin Bormann, Ludwig Stumpfegger. Both killed by either a shell burst or cyanide. It was never fully known. Stumpfegger's glasses lay cracked beside him in the dirt. His surgeon's hands were curled into fists. The doctor who once served the Nazi elite died nameless in the rubble of the Reich he helped sustain. No family mourned him. No nation remembered him. Only the cold morning wind touched his body before soldiers buried it in an unmarked pit. He had descended into the bunker as a physician. He died as a symbol of a broken regime. A man swallowed by the very darkness he thought he could control. Ludwig Stumpfegger. Part 3. The Bones Beneath Berlin. Berlin, 1945. After the fall. The war ended, but Berlin did not breathe again. It only smoldered. The streets were nothing but rubble, twisted steel, burnt trees, and brick skeletons. Soviet soldiers marched past mountains of debris. Civilians wandered like ghosts, searching for bread, water, lost family. In the shadow of a collapsed rail embankment near the Weidendammer Bridge, 2 half-buried bodies lay under broken concrete. One tall, gaunt, one smaller, narrow-shouldered, in a torn SS uniform. No one knew who they were. Soviet troops shoveled dirt over them without ceremony. No names, no funerals, no last rites. Just a pit of anonymous dead in a city that had stopped counting corpses. 1. Rumors and phantoms. In the months that followed, whispers spread through what remained of the SS. Stumpfegger escaped. Stumpfegger is in Bavaria. No, he fled to Argentina. He died crossing the Spree. He killed himself with Bormann. No one knew the truth. No one wanted to. The Allies, meanwhile, were searching desperately for prominent Nazi officials. But Ludwig Stumpfegger wasn't high on their list, not at first. Not compared to Himmler, Hitler's secretaries, or the Gestapo leadership. Still, his name appeared in interrogations. A British intelligence officer tapped a file. Dr. Ludwig Stumpfegger, personal surgeon, possible involvement in questionable practices. A Soviet major added coldly, "Find him, dead or alive." They didn't know he was already under their boots. 2. Himmler's shadow. During the Nuremberg trials, survivors spoke of Stumpfegger's time under Himmler. Experiments on prisoners, surgical procedures with no anesthesia, amputations performed for research, children used for biological studies. Some accusations were impossible to verify. Others were documented in chilling detail. A man who once swore to heal had spent part of his career cutting deeper into darkness. And his work in the bunker, the killing of the Goebbels children, became one of the darkest stains on his name. Magda was dead. Goebbels was dead. But Stumpfegger had done the act. One British prosecutor put it simply, "He murdered children. That is his legacy." But without a body, he remained a ghost, untried, unpunished, unburied. 3. The search for Bormann and Stumpfegger. In the 1960s, the search for Martin Bormann intensified. Rumor after rumor surfaced that he had escaped to South America. The media exploded with stories of sightings: Argentina, Paraguay, Brazil. Every whisper added fuel. With every search for Bormann came a shadow: Stumpfegger. If Bormann survived, then maybe the doctor did too. Germany's West Berlin police opened an investigation. Interpol requested files. The CIA took interest. But Berlin was vast, destroyed, rebuilt, layer upon layer of concrete hiding secrets. For 25 years, Stumpfegger remained a phantom. Then, in 1972, construction workers digging near the Lehrter Bahnhof hit something hard: bones. 2 skeletons lying together, one larger, one smaller, with fragments of glass where eyeglasses once lay. Excavators stopped. Police cordoned off the area. Pathologists stepped in. Could this finally be Bormann? They called forensic experts, anthropologists. Soon, the world listened. 4. The truth in the soil tests confirmed it. One skeleton was Martin Bormann. The other, slightly smaller, with damage to the jawbone and signs of healing surgery, was identified as Ludwig Stumpfegger. He had not fled to South America. He had not escaped through the ruins. He had not lived in the shadows. He had died that very night in 1945 beside Bormann, killed by an explosion or by poison they swallowed together. The reports were cold, clinical, final. A West Berlin medical officer said, "It is ironic. Stumpfegger, a surgeon, was identified by his own surgical work." The bones were reburied in an unmarked grave. No ceremony, no monument, just dirt covering the remains of a man history would never forgive. 5. The Doctor and the Damned. Historians debated his intentions. Was he a fanatic? A frightened man trapped in the machinery of the Reich? An ambitious careerist who followed orders too eagerly? None of the interpretations erased the facts. He had stood beside Himmler. He had worked for the SS. He had carried out acts no doctor should ever do. And in the bunker, during those final hellish hours, he had committed the most unforgivable of all. He had killed 6 innocent children. Whether out of fear or obedience, whether by order or pressure, he made the choice. That was enough. 6. The Final Judgment. In the decades after his death, Stumpfegger became a symbol not of heroism, nor even of high-ranking evil, but of something quieter, more disturbing. The educated man who chooses complicity, a surgeon who traded healing for obedience, a scientist who surrendered conscience for career, a doctor who walked willingly into the darkest room of history. In life, he served men like Hitler and Himmler. In death, he became part of their collapse. No statues, no honors, not even a gravestone with his name, just a whisper in archives, a footnote in testimonies, a cautionary tale in medical ethics courses, a reminder of how intellect without morality becomes a weapon. Epilogue. The man the earth tried to forget. In Berlin, tourists walk over the spot where his bones were found, unaware of the history buried beneath their feet. Children play near the renovated streets. Trains rumble overhead. Life moves on. But under the concrete, somewhere in the dirt, remains the final trace of Ludwig Stumpfegger, a man swallowed by the chaos he helped serve. He entered history as a doctor. He ended as a ghost. His story is not one of redemption, not one of tragedy, not one of misunderstood heroism. It is the story of what happens when morality collapses inside a man, the same way a city collapses under artillery fire. The bunker fell, the Reich fell, the doctor fell, and Berlin rose again, without him.